Good morning, everyone. Today's another special Sunday, and I wonder if you can think why that might be. Did you eat pancakes this week? That might give you a clue. It's the first Sunday in Lent, and Lent lasts for 40 days, and it takes us right up to Easter Sunday. Now, during Lent, we're going to be thinking about the reasons why Jesus came to us. And today, we're going to see that Jesus came to earth to fulfill God's promise, God's law that we read about in the Old Testament of the Bible. Throughout the history of the Bible, right up to this current moment, God has been loving and calling, blessing and forgiving men, women and children of all nations so that they can enjoy life in God. And we too are part of that God's purposes of love. To love one another, to love God's creation, and to share in the love of God. This Lent, we thought we'd do something a little bit different, and we're going to light candles to help remind us of these purposes week by week as we journey through Lent. We're going to light one new candle each Sunday morning, and then you can choose a time each day to light them in the week, maybe at a meal time, maybe at bedtime, maybe first thing in the morning, to remember the reasons why Jesus came to us. So by Easter Sunday, you'll have 7 candles alight. Now they could be coloured candles like these ones that I've got here, a different colour for each week. Or you could maybe get some tea lights, something very simple. I've just put some on a plate and arranged some greenery around them. It doesn't matter what they look like. The idea is just to have a symbol to help us to remember week by week the different reasons we're looking at for why Jesus came. And this week, the Whitehead family are going to light the first Lent candle for us.
This first Lent candle reminds us that
He came to fulfill God's law.
in love, God has the very best in mind for us and has been working his loving purposes since before the world began.
Thank you, God, that you have eternal purposes for all creation, and that you are now and have always been at work to achieve these purposes. Thank you that as part of your plan you sent Jesus to fulfill your law and prophecies, and that even today your plans are working out in our lives and in 100 different ways. Help us to trust you with our lives, especially the parts we find hard to let go.
Amen.
All of us are part of a family. Some have big families, some have small families, but all of us have a family history. And you may have seen some people try to draw their families on a family tree to illustrate how everyone is connected. I've got part of my family on this necklace. Maybe you can see it's a tree shape, and there's names of members of my family. Now, Jesus was part of a family too, and I'm sure you all know and remember from our Advent journey about Mary and Joseph, Jesus' earthly mum and dad. But actually, Jesus' family was much, much bigger than that. There were lots and lots and lots of people that made up part of his story, part of Jesus' history. And maybe you didn't realise that some of the people that we've learnt about in HubKids before were actually part of Jesus' family tree. And they played their part in God's big story, in his plan to come and share for all of creation his great love. Now, I wonder if you can see in this story that we're going to look at today, how many people you recognise, people that you've heard about, and you'll be surprised that they are part of Jesus' family tree.
Before he came to earth as a human being, God the Son was with the Father. No one created him. He has always existed. God created the first people, Adam and Eve, but they did not obey him. All along, God planned to send his Son to earth to save people from sin. At just the right time, Jesus came to earth as a baby. He was born to Mary, the wife of Joseph. Jesus is different than any other baby who was ever born because he is fully God and fully human. Like all people on earth, Jesus' family had a history, a family tree. Jesus had parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and great-great-grandparents, back and back for many generations. Jesus was born into the family of Abraham and the family of King David. Abraham had a son named Isaac. When Isaac had a family, one of his sons was named Jacob. Jacob was part of Jesus' family. Years later, a man named Solomon was born into Jesus' family tree. He married Rahab, who hid the Israelite spies when they came to Jericho. Rahab had a baby named Boaz. Boaz was a farmer, and he married Ruth. Boaz and Ruth had a son named Obed. Obed's son was Jesse. Jesse had many sons. His youngest was David. David was just a boy when he was chosen to be Israel's king. King David liked to write. He wrote songs called Psalms, and some of them were about the time when Jesus would come to earth. Other people in Jesus' family were kings too. David's son Solomon was a king. King Jehoshaphat was part of Jesus' family, and so was Uzziah, Ahaz, Hezekiah, and Josiah. God's people returned home from exile in Babylon. Then Shealtiel was born. His son was Zerubbabel. Later, Matthan came along. Matthan's son was named Jacob, and Jacob's son was named Joseph. Joseph is the man who married Jesus' mother, Mary. Joseph raised Jesus as his own son. Jesus was truly God's son, the Messiah. Jesus came to earth as a human. Jesus had earthly parents, Mary and Joseph, but his true father is God. Through Jesus, God kept his promises to Abraham and David. Jesus saves people from their sins and adopts them into God's family.
Hello kids, today I will be taking a walk and I will be seeing where God is at work in his creation. There's some ravens flying around and there's quite a few little bits and bobs happening. Oh wow! Look at these beautiful flowers! Oh my goodness, they are just gorgeous! Phil, come and have a look!
Oh wow! Look at all these wonderful flowers. So while some flowers come from seeds, where do you think these flowers come from? So we have snowdrops, we have crocus, and we have some daffodils which are yet to flower. Well, they don't come from seeds, they come from something like this, which is called a bulb. And a bulb has all the information in it to tell the flower what it should look like. So it's a kind of like a bit of a promise. The bulb is the promise of what the flower will look like, because inside the bulb it says how tall the flower should be, what colour it should be, when it should come out, how long it should last, and all these things. And in a way it's similar to Jesus, because he was a promise, because he came to fulfill God's law.
Phil's explanation made it really clear where these lovely flowers came from, which was the bulb, and it really makes me think God's creation is just wonderful, and we can see in our gardens how God is at work.
So on our wander today, I'm going to take you to one of our favourite trees in the village. Some of you younger ones might recognise it. You might even be able to guess it just from where I'm standing now. It's a tree that in the autumn time produces beautiful fruit that lots of you like to play with. And after school, there's a rush to run to the tree and see who can collect the most, the shiniest, the biggest, you've guessed it, conkers. It's a huge chestnut tree. Let's have a look. Can you see it right in front of me here? Look at the huge canopy. Now we're in winter time, so there aren't any leaves and there aren't any conkers, but it's still a beautiful shape. I'm not the tallest of people, and standing under this huge canopy dwarfs me even more. Can you imagine how big the roots must be to be able to support a tree as huge as this? How wide do you think it is? Look up to the canopy. Did you know tree roots stretch between 3 and 7 times the diameter or width of their canopies? Now my maths is not that great, but I reckon these tree roots can stretch from here right round to where my house is. So where we were walking, the roots of this tree were underneath my feet. This tree has years of history, years of growth to enable it to fulfill its purpose of providing fruit and shelter. I wonder what tree you could look out for on your walks this week. I wonder if you look out your windows, how many trees can you see? Where do you think their roots stretch to? We don't have physical roots like trees, but what things help us grow and learn? What is holding us up through these difficult lockdown days? Who are the people in our story that help and support us? We started our time together this morning lighting a candle to remind us that Jesus came to fulfill God's purposes, and to see that today we need to be rooted in His love in order that we can share that love with others. So let's use our routines this week to think about the things that nourish us, the people that help and support us, to help us to stay rooted in Him, to enable us to share Him with others.